Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down one of the most complex and, honestly, one of the most critical systems on Earth, our global food system. We're going to see how it all connects, from the basic laws of nature all the way to the high-tech future that's landing on our plate. All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we got to get the basics down, the laws of nature that everything is built on. Then we'll dive into the huge global challenges we're up against and the incredible innovations popping up to meet them. After that, we'll see how all this actually affects our daily diet. And finally, we'll look at the big choices we all have for the future. So, before we can even begin to talk about the future of food, we have to understand the foundation. I'm talking about the timeless, unbreakable rules of energy that govern every single ecosystem on this planet. It all starts with something called a food web. Now, forget this simple food chain you learned about in school. This is way more interesting. It's a tangled, complex, beautiful map of how energy moves, showing who eats whom, from the tiniest microbe all the way up to the biggest predator. So how does this energy move? Well, it happens in steps, what scientists call trophic levels. It all kicks off with the producers, plants and algae that literally make their own food from sunlight. Then they get eaten by primary consumers, the herbivores, and they, in turn, get eaten by secondary and then tertiary consumers, moving all the way up to the apex predators at the very top. Okay, so just look at this number, 10%. It might not seem like much, but honestly, this single number is one of the most important rules in all of biology. It explains so much about why life on Earth looks the way it does. This is the famous 10% rule. And what it means is that when, say, a rabbit eats grass, it only gets about 10% of the energy that grass contained. The other 90%, well, the grass used it to live, or it was just lost as heat. It's this incredible inefficiency that shapes nature. It's why you have a huge base of plants that can only support a few top predators. And for our food system, it means every step up the food chain, like feeding grain to cattle, comes with a massive 90% energy tax. That law of physics is right at the heart of our global food challenge. And this is where it gets really wild. It shows just how connected everything is. A trophic cascade is what happens when you change something at the top, like removing a predator, and the effects just ripple all the way down the web. Sometimes it can change the entire landscape. It's this powerful reminder that no part of the system is truly on its own. Okay, so now let's see how these rules of nature apply to us. Because right now, our modern global food system is pushing the planet's resources to their absolute limit. We are smack in the middle of what many experts call a perfect storm. The first big pressure is just simple math. By the year 2050, the UN projects we're going to have to feed nearly 10 billion people. That is almost 2 billion more mouths to feed them today, all living on a planet with a finite amount of land and water. But here is the insane paradox. At the exact same time we're worrying about feeding more people, we are unbelievably wasteful. The estimates are staggering. We lose or waste about a third of all food produced for us to eat, every single year. Just think about all the energy, water, and land that goes into that for nothing. And then you throw climate change into the mix, it's a massive threat multiplier. Projections from a major study suggest that by 2050, the impact of climate change on our crops could lead to over 500,000 extra deaths per year. So when you start putting all these pieces together, you really see the scale of the challenge. You've got environmental shocks, you've got rising demand for foods like meat that use up a ton of resources, and you've got systemic issues like waste and fragile supply chains. All of that, combined with global instability, creates that perfect storm, making our entire food system deeply vulnerable. But you know what they say, crisis drives innovation. And right now, scientists, engineers, and farmers are coming up with some truly radical new ways to produce food. They are fundamentally reimagining what farming can even be. So, one of the biggest ideas is, what if we could decouple our food from the land itself? Enter cultivated meat. This is real animal meat, but it's grown directly from animal cells inside a bioreactor, kind of like how you'd brew beer. As you can see here, it could give us a way to get protein with just a fraction of the land, water, and climate impact of traditional farming. And that same idea, decoupling food from the field, is happening with plants too. It's called vertical farming, and it takes agriculture indoors and, well, upwards. By growing crops in stacked layers under perfectly controlled conditions, you can grow food pretty much anywhere, all year round, using way less water and space, and completely safe from the crazy weather climate change is throwing at us. Look, these are all part of a much bigger revolution in agricultural technology, or ag tech. You can think of it as our entire food system finally getting a massive software upgrade. We're talking about AI and drones that give each plant the exact water it needs, biotech creating crops that can survive drought, and even blockchain to make the supply chain totally transparent from the farm all the way to your fork. Okay, so this is all fascinating high-tech stuff, right? But what does it actually mean for us? How do all these massive shifts, the stresses and the innovations, actually show up in the food we eat every day? What does the future actually look like on our plates?
Well, on one side of the coin, there's this absolute explosion of what are called ultra-processed foods, or UPFs. Think of these as industrial creations made with stuff you probably wouldn't find in your kitchen. And they now make up a huge portion of the food we eat in many parts of the world.
And I know what you might be thinking. So what? What's the big deal? They're cheap, they're super convenient, and let's be honest, they're designed to taste amazing. So what's the problem? Well, the science is starting to paint a pretty clear and frankly pretty worrying picture. A high diet of UPS is being consistently linked to a whole host of serious health problems. We're talking higher risks of obesity, diabetes, poor mental health, and as one major study found, a significantly higher risk of heart attack and stroke. It's become a massive public health issue. But at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, there's a powerful counter-trend emerging that feels like it's straight out of science fiction: personalized nutrition, or nutrigenomics. The idea here is to use tech like AI to analyze your unique biology, your genetics, your health data, and then create a diet tailor-made just for you. It's literally turning food into personalized medicine to make you as healthy as possible. And all of this, the environmental pressures, the incredible tech, the shifts in our diets, it's all bringing us to this huge fork in the road. The future is not set in stone, and there are some very different paths we could end up on. The experts who study these big, complex systems, they basically see 5 main ways this could all play out. They range from a scenario where we just kind of muddle through like we are now, to a best-case future of global sustainability built on working together. But they also include some much darker possibilities, like rising inequality, where technology creates a food system for the rich and another for the poor, or even uncontrolled chaos, where the whole thing just breaks down. So it all comes down to this one question, really. We are standing at a crossroads, looking at these potential paths from working together to total collapse. Which future are we going to build? The one we get will be created by our policies, our innovations, and the choices each of us makes every single day. The future of food is, quite literally, on our plate.